This next part will probably be more interesting because we're going to be talking about projects that we have accomplished and projects that have been prioritized, those kind of things. But start out,
The New York City phone book.
we have, oops, that's what I want. We have 130 full-time positions funded in the current year budget. And that gives you the breakout. Of course, you can see police, police at 37, fire, and public works are our biggest employment areas. And we do have an arrangement with the school, is why the footnotes there, where we pay a large portion of one of the school-employed school resource officers at the school. In your book, there is kind of a highlight. It's difficult to list everything every department does, but if you look in your book, for example, human resources, you typically might think they deal with hiring employees and recruiting employees, but they also deal with health insurance, procurement, administration, retirement benefits, the finance department, list all those things. But in addition, they also are the purchasing agent for the city. They do accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll. They're over the cemetery records. They collect our utility bills, meter reading. They're involved in setting the rates every year for utility rates based on the consumer price index. You look at the planning department and the functions, zoning ordinance, a comprehensive plan, subdivision regulations, property maintenance, deal with historic preservation ordinance enforcement, construction permits, enforcing all the building codes. So sometimes when you think, I know a lot of you think city manager is just setting up the office waiting for you all to call and get him something to do. Same way. So this would be good to review because I don't think we stop and think, gosh, that department has 30 things they're doing. It's not just what we typically think. So reviewing that at your own time might give you some insight. No wonder those guys say they're busy. Look at all the things that they cover. Next, just to give you an idea of where we're at, I won't go through every department's deal. You can read the state of city, I think, kind of tell you what we've, where we're at currently. And of course, nothing happens without city council. There is, in my 6 years, there has not been anything we've done that city council wasn't involved in. City council sets the budget. City council in their annual retreat sets the priorities. So every project we do ties back to the city council in some form or fashion. And the city council has been very progressive in trying to move our community forward. And I've been very appreciative of that. I've been doing this for roughly 44 years. And I can tell you that in Guthrie, we probably have the best set of department heads and management team I've ever had. And I've had some good ones over the years, but Guthrie is fortunate in the quality of people that we have. We'll talk about the new city manager. You all have met him at this point. Our employees, it doesn't matter whether how hot it is, how cold it is, what the weather, whether it's flooding, our employees answer the call. We've got tremendous city employees that every day answers the call. I think it's important to understand where we come from, and that we've got a long ways to go, but I think we made substantial progress. In 2017, we got down to about $2.5 million in these different funds. But without drawing from these restrictive funds, my first day in February, city clerk come in my office about 8:30 and said, by the way, we have 3 payrolls in March, and we don't have enough money to meet those payrolls. That was, Eddie thinks he had a rough introduction a few weeks ago. So immediately, we had to do a mid-year adjustment, and we eliminated 10 positions. But it went deeper than that. The general fund operations had grown faster than sales tax revenue. Police and fire primarily, their budgets were growing at a percentage every year that far exceeded the capacity of our sales tax revenue. So then, once they used all the general fund resources, then they started drawing from Public Works Authority. And we had a situation where we had done some utility rate adjustments to generate revenue to help pay for building a new wastewater treatment plant. So not only did we have to adjust and eliminate those 10 positions, we had to figure out, okay, there's about $300,000 a year being transferred from Public Works Authority that should be going towards the new wastewater treatment plant. We had to wean ourselves to take that back out of the general fund and keep it in Public Works Authority where it belongs. We're also faced with a $300,000 settlement on a wrongful termination case on a police officer. We had to find that $300,000. So it was a pretty tough situation back in February of 2017 that we were in. We had equipment. You know, we had some trucks 20, 30 years old. People were driving trucks to snow plow when you could see through the floorboard. And we had, at one point, we had 2 police cars for every one we needed because one was in the shop and we would drive one until it needed to go in the shop and we'd drive the other one. And we would just constantly rotate. That's how bad our equipment was. We've come a long way since then. I'm not saying we don't have a long way to go, and I think Eddie will take us there. But as you can see, we have very diligently increased our revenue sources. The general fund, we have 2 stabilization, one for the general fund, and we're supposed to have $1 million in it. And at the end of FY22, we had over $1 million. And same way with our Public Works Authority stabilization, we were $800,000 in 22. I believe budget, we show in this year's budget, we will reach that $1 million this year. And we have been accumulating resources in the general fund and Public Works Authority. One catastrophic event, and you have to pay for it, or if you want to recruit an industry and you need a cash incentive, having funds in the bank is not a bad thing. Now, you can have too much, but I don't think we've reached that point yet. But our financial situation has significantly improved over the last few years. There you can see our 2 biggest departments, of course, are police and fire budget-wise. We depend on working relationships and partners with a lot of entities. And this is just most of our partners. There's probably others out there. Those partnerships don't happen and aren't maintained by just calling them when you need something. That takes effort by Team Guthrie or our staff and our city manager. Constant communications and working with these people to maintain those partnerships, the networking. I know this is about orientation for city council, but in all of my years, I have found the number one thing that young families look at to make a decision if they're going to live in the community is the quality of education. And supporting public schools like the Guthrie School District, Meridian Tech, those are big assets that draw people to our community. And Dr. Simpson gives the example when he first came here many years ago, and you see a subdivision, and a lot of subdivisions tell what school district they are. They didn't put that on subdivisions in Guthrie back then. But one of the things he takes pride in now, many times when you see a new subdivision that's in the Guthrie School District, it'll have Guthrie School District on it. Well, 10 years ago, they were too embarrassed. They didn't even want people to know it was in Guthrie. So we've come a long ways in that arena as well. And our community has been very supportive, talking about community image and investing in bond issues. Healthcare is another thing, especially with the senior population. And we're very fortunate to have a local hospital and clinics in our community. We are connected. We're on I-35, which is, Justin, what's the term for I-35?
Mega region, is that right?
Something like that. From Texas to Chicago or Detroit. The amount of traffic. So we're well connected. We're on the railroad. We're hopefully someday have the Heartland Flyer stopping here. We're close to Real Rogers Airport. Guthrie is in a good location. We have a booming downtown. Lazy Arena is a big attraction for us. Population growth. Logan County has been the third fastest growing county percentage-wise the last 2 decades. So we're growing. Guthrie is starting to see growth. If you look at the new subdivisions that are in various stages of development, over 800 new homes are going in. Look at all of the area universities around us, the area career techs that are around us. I know we can do more, but if you think of the last 5-7 years of all of the new businesses started downtown and outside of downtown, there's been a tremendous amount of activity. You can go to downtowns all over the state of Oklahoma and they're ghost towns. I know we got empty buildings, but I'm more concerned about the condition of those empty buildings and them going away than them being empty right now, because I think if you look at our sales tax and look at the businesses in town, we got a significant number of private entities starting businesses in our community. As Adam mentioned in his comments earlier, our historic district is a major item as part of our tourism. We have a lot of festivals, as Mr. Case mentioned, Redbrick Nights, Bluegrass Festival, 89ers, Renaissance. The one caution I would make, for example, on 89ers Day, they're always wanting to add more events, which is great. But during that week, we have actually reached the capacity of our staff to support more events. We don't have enough police officers to provide security. So as you add more, that's great, but you have to bring in outside security. That is 1 week that we are probably taxed to our maximum as city staff. Now, other weeks, we probably still have some capacity, but that's one thing we have to be careful about. is not adding events beyond our capacity to support.
Do we have any idea, Leroy, how many people come to 89 a day?
Justin, do you have a number?
No, sir, I don't. It's a significant number, but there's, we don't really have the means to give a hard count on that.
We have a lot of tourism events in town, the Pollard Theater, Territorial Christmas, and now we have Merry Christmas down in the flats each year. So we keep adding events and growing. Bike night is, and bicycling is becoming more important, is becoming a tourism industry. Lazy Arena brings in over 500,000 people. I think I skipped a slide, didn't I? Maybe not.
Skip the movies.
Theater, or movies, is a big thing. We are film friendly, certified. Staff does a lot to support and work with the film industry in town. And there's been some hiccups in the tax incentive and how it's been handled at the state. It slowed us down a little bit this year. But we will continue to be involved in the film industry. Is a big event in our community. We are trying to upgrade our electric in the downtown area in Banner Wells, Banner Park, to house, as we try to house more events, to provide where not everybody has operated off generators. We're trying to enhance our capacity to provide electric service for all those events. On street paving, we have a monthly fee on the utility bill of $4.25. That generates about $235,000 a year. And then we set our 3/4 cent sales tax. We set aside $200,000. So we got about $435,000 for street improvements. We try to do a $100,000 overlay, $100,000 in ADA accessible projects. Many times those projects are together. We try to set $200,000 aside each year for bigger projects, and then $35,000 for engineering fees. But when you got a project like the Harrison Avenue Bridge, nobody even knew it existed. They forgot about being there. And the weight limit on that became so restrictive, we had to drive around it. Well, we had to address that bridge. Well, that was about a $600,000 project. So that's 3 years of that $200,000 right there that we had to invest in. Nobody sees any progress as a result of that, but it's something we had to do. Those examples, some other street projects we've done. We've tried to get grants to supplement our local money. The CRRSAA grant, we got $625,000. That's a $100,000 grant, no match required. We're doing approximately 2 miles of roads with that project. That's an ongoing project. We got a $200,000 grant for a action plan. And a lot of people think, and our match is 50. A lot of people, well, why do you do that? It's come to a point that if we're going to apply for federal highway money, we have to have an action plan, and we have to show that whatever project we're applying for is included in that action plan. So it's a step that we had to do in order to position ourselves for future federal highway grants. New disc golf course was put in 2017, which is highly used. We did Banner Park. That was all paid for out of the 1/4 cent sales tax. Mineral Wells was 50/50 roughly, where 437,000 of it was paid out of the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. The upgrading of the tennis courts and building the new basketball court was 100% out of the CIP sales tax. Fire trucks, equipment, you can see as an example, and this really slide could be updated, but out of $7 million of projects there, 46% was paid out grant money, almost half. And then we used CARES Act money and ARPA money. So out of that 7.4 million, only 600,000 that come out of the general fund or GPWI. 8% was our money. So we've been very good. And I normally talk about Team Guthrie, but on this one, to make you aware of how important a knowledgeable staff and seasoned staff can be. In the case of the fire truck, we got $227,000 from USDA and then use our CARES Act. That grant application was rejected. And because of the city manager's knowledge, we appealed that and got that $227,000. Without that knowledge, we'd have went on down the road and wouldn't have got that $227,000. But we replaced a lot of equipment.
What was that knowledge?
The knowledge of knowing that you could appeal a decision on a grant application and how to do it.
Was it a wording thing or?
In this case, that particular one, we learned, they only look at the general fund. And when we got our COVID money, we were putting that in the general fund initially and then moving it, so it made it look like our general fund had too much money. And so they said, well, you got too much money to get a grant. So we appealed that, got an exception, got that funded, and the next year when we did the budget, you'll see, if you look at the balances of funds, the general fund went down because we moved that money to Public Works Authority, to the stabilization. We created a grant fund. Though we didn't create, the grant fund was already there. We moved some to the grant fund. We created an equipment fund. So we moved that money out of the general fund so we wouldn't run up against that in the future.
The reason why I wanted you to say that was, I was making comment this morning about Facebook posts, and one particular post was how many different categories or funds we have that makes it easy for us to, do illegal things with or pocket some of the money. But that's the reason why we have so many funds. Or one particular reason is because
It is a good reason also for accountability.
yeah.
Sometimes you have to keep the funds separate because they have specific purpose. Wastewater treatment plants under construction should be done by September. That's a $20 million project. That's a big project for this size community, but something we had to do because of the condition of our old plant. Highland Hall, out of the CARES Act, we had a balance after we bought the fire truck of $476,000. We are renovating the bathrooms there. I think we've done a couple small change orders since then, but once we finish the bathrooms, we will do another $285,000 of improvements, but we wanted to finish the bathrooms first, and then see how much money we had left. We also, through another grant, and I'll talk about it more because this is just a portion of it, but we got a CDBG COVID grant, $42,000 to replace the HVAC units and $21,000 for windows. And if I remember right, that's about a $600,000 grant when we get to it. Again, that grant comes as a result of a city manager at night doing research on grant opportunities were and saw that the Department of Commerce had $600,000 that they needed to get rid of for HVAC systems, and we got new HVAC systems in 7 city buildings that need to be replaced at some time, and windows in 3 buildings, didn't cost city a dime. So having quality staff, and now we have, every department head we have is written a grant. And the capacity and knowledge that we've invested in our people to do that is tremendous. That one, it was $381,000, no match required. Install new HVACs in 7 buildings and install windows in 4. So if you take the 261, and I'm just making this point for my own benefit, and the 381, you're looking at about $700,000. I didn't cost you all a dime. My involvement in grants actually has paid my salary my entire time I've been here. Pop-up shops, Shonda and others took the lead on this. That project was funded with $100,000 of grant funds and in-kind labor. We got a grant to do a trails program south of Highway 33 along 5th Street, and a pedestrian crossing bridge and down into what's commonly referred to the elbow, and it will stop there at Noble Park. That was a $300,000 grant, $100,000 of cash match from the city, and $336 in-kind labor. Something that we run into in the last 2 years, Osage Nation has decided they created their own cultural department. In the past, we would, if we got a federal grant, we would send the environmental review to SHPO. If it was in our historic district, of course, it would go through our historic process, and to the National Archaeological Society. Now it has to go to Osage Nation, and they require a cultural resource study on every federal grant. Even though we're not part of Osage Nation's territory, they have pretty much brought all federal projects to a halt in Oklahoma. And, for example, the water line on Division, replacing that 1920 line, we had to do potholes all up and down Division as a test to make sure that there was no Native American artifacts in that right of way before we could replace that water line. This project and our 3 softball fields, on our 3 softball fields, they've had the cultural resource study showing that there is no Native American artifacts out there for 7 months, and we can't get them to release the project. I went to their cultural resource department, our archaeological department, and they said, well, you don't have authority to ask us the status of it. We'll get to it when we can. You need to visit with the National Park Service. I went to the National Park Service, and they said, oh, no, you can't ask us. You got to go back to the Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department. You go to them, and they say, we can't do anything to help you. All the projects are held up. You just have to sit and bide your time. When they get ready, they'll release it. Well, with inflation, that's eating into our project. But a lot of people say, well, did you really get those grants? We can't start the projects until we get a release, because if we start them before we get the release, anything we do we can't use grant money, and it doesn't count towards our match. So it's been a real roadblock, and now we will start visiting with our federal delegation, senators and congresswomen, to see if we can not do away with the cultural and environmental, but maybe put some time limits on it, where they only got so much time to respond, is probably the approach we will do next. Those are some of the amenities of that project. Same thing, Owen Field, $2 million project to build 3 new softball fields. Switchgrass, that did the cultural resource study, identified a place, and they said it was a religious grotto, so it was cultural resource. Then we had to do our own independent research to find out, no, it wasn't a religious grotto. It was actually a drainage ditch for an old railroad that used to go through there. They got partially filled in that looked like a grotto. So there's a lot of roadblocks, and when you're dealing with historians.
What's the definition of a grotto?
A grotto is, it's kind of like a cave where you might have a statue of a religious figure, normally in their offsetting. The Catholic religion does it more than anybody. But
Like a nave?
it could, St. Mary could be in there, and it's normally a remote area where they go and for religious purpose, pray, those kind of things. And it looked like one because it was close to the Job Corps, which used to be a religious facility, and it was on that property. So I could see them coming to that conclusion, but it wasn't. It was just a drainage structure. There was no religious items there. It was just a drainage structure. The backside had been filled in, and it looked like a little cave that similar to one. So we had to do our own research. Grants, just so you're aware, I included, I think I put a blue sheet of paper in mine, but there's a spreadsheet that folds out like this behind the, that talks about critical infrastructure, and you can see the water lines. We have, it went from, in '21, a budget estimate of 34,000, in '23, 67,000. That's how much inflation has. But this shows how many miles of water lines, sewer lines, different things we need to do. We have applied for what used to be called earmarking, now it's called community project funding. Out of this effort, Congresswoman Bice put in for a funding of $7.5 million to be matched with $1 million from Edmond, City Guthrie, and Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. Our part would be $250 to build a new terminal at the airport. And the taxiway to that. And then she also put in for replacement of one of our bridges on College Avenue, over $2 million. My understanding from the city manager of Edmond, I don't know about the bridge, but the airport terminal, new terminal, made it into the actual funding bill. Now, it could still get kicked out as part of negotiations, but it has made several steps.
Cool.
So we got 55 miles of water lines that need to be replaced at $67 million now. And also on that spread out spreadsheet, I put other funding opportunities that might be pursued. We have first tried to get as many grants as we can before we start talking about raising utility rates. You all have seen this and talked about it. It's in your thing if you want. There is a water break every 2 minutes in the United States. Sometimes I accuse Tenny of trying to keep pace with the national average. But some of you may not be fully aware But we have more than one water main break at a time. And so you may call, or someone may call you because it's a water main break that may be leaking a gallon, but we may have another one that's leaking 100 gallons a minute or more. What we do based on the amount of the leak and what it serves in a priority order. So some of them do stay around a while. If you got 5 leaks, you do them in order. And I know that's hard to understand. Well, there's a damn leak there, go fix it. Well, we only got so many crew members and we have to prioritize. We got that many leaks going on. Between 1995 and 2020, the city of Guthrie had replaced 13,000 linear feet of those 33 miles, or 4.5% of our water line. Since 2020, we've gotten grants to replace 2.75 miles. I would point out, let me check, on the grant in 2022, that 4,000 linear grant, in my notes, let me find it. We got originally a $300,000 grant for that project. And we were gonna match it with $595,000. When the bid come in, the bid was over 1.8, right at 1.8 million. Twice what our grant was. We did a compelling letter to the Department of Commerce. In addition to the original $300,000 grant, we got a supplemental grant of check, make sure I give you good information. 595,000. So the original grant was just under 300. We got an additional 600,000 because we wrote a compelling letter. Again, having people that know how to work grants is important. That's the largest secondary grant at that time, supplemental grant the Department of Commerce had ever done. So just to point that out, the importance of having quality staff that know what they're doing. Water tower maintenance. This is a project that we've not funded yet, but needs to happen. We talked about the airport terminal expansion. Our share of that project will be $250,000. If you look, we got 3 water sources: Guthrie Lake, Liberty Lake, and Cottonwood Creek. Now you have to make an exception this year with the drought. We found out maybe we need more water sources, and that may have to be added to our list. But during normal times, we can draw 7 million gallons a day from those 3 sources. Our water capacity at the plant is 6 million. As we see more growth, because we sell raw water to rural water, plus the growth we're seeing in our community, the raw water line that brings the water from these sources to our plant only has a capacity of under 4 million. So to produce 6 million, we need to upgrade that line. So it's going to be a decision, is it a higher priority to up the capacity of that line and invest in that so that we can get during normal times up to 6 million gallons, or leave that at 4 and we grow, but add more water capacity by wells or another lake or something out here. But then during normal times, you can't get it to the water plant anyway because so you catch 22. So where do you invest first? And every 10 years you may have a drought, but at some point as we grow, that's going to be important every year, that we can get that water from our water source to our plant to treat it. And that's a $2 million investment. So there's choices to be made. We need to do work on the spillway at Guthrie Lake. Talked about sewer lines. We've applied for grants to do Sooner Road and 19th Street. Those are still active grants. We've not heard. We got a lot of bridges to replace. Fire department, you'll be dealing with that in the budget, I'm sure. We serve about 2/3 of the county with the ambulance service. Not only are we going out inside the city limits, but we are growing in the county. We've been the 3rd fastest percentage-wise the last 2 decades. Yes, we need more capacity in firefighters and equipment, second stations to have response calls, but it all comes down to budget. One of the things we've been working on, and 2 of the key players will be gone now, so somebody else will have to take up the torch. But we've been working with OG&E to do a $5 subscription on every meter. OG&E has 14,000 active meters, 16,000 total. Some of them are active if the data got to count. They are working to go to Corporation Commission to put a $5 subscription fee. You can opt out. Everybody's put in initially, but you can opt out if you want out. But if you pay that $5 on your utility fee, then if we do an ambulance run, we only collect what your insurance pays. And you don't have to private pay the difference. And that fee will generate over $1 million a year. $5 a month times 12 months times 16. That could be a significant answer to additional funding for EMS service and equipment. We made more headway in the last 12 months. OG&E has always been reluctant, but we made a lot of progress with them in the last 12 months. And they seem receptive now. They will have to get approval from the Corporation Commission because they're controlled by Corporation Commission. The 2 rural electrics, we have Central Rural Electric and the other ones keep in my mind right now. They said they would follow suit. They only have to get theirs approved by the board. We'd like to relocate the youth baseball complex out of the floodplain. It's not just every once in a while or every 10 years. You can see on the PowerPoint the number of times that we've had significant floods in Cottonwood Creek. And when we have a flood in Cottonwood Creek, that's where you play baseball. And we've had to terminate seasons early. Again, improvements to airport. We have bought some land out there. We'd like to eventually buy more land and create a business park at the airport to recruit some jobs, aviation-related jobs at the airport. Swimming pool, man, that's been talked about a lot in the last 2 weeks. Glad I'm not in charge anymore, Eddie.
I keep hearing that.
Pool was built in the 1940s. The piping that goes around this has so many leaks in it. Retubing all that piping would be a major undertaking. that, the concrete is deteriorating. You can take your foot, and we have to patch that every year. To build the type of aquatic center that people would like today, I call this a cement pond, is one with a zero depth entry, swim lanes, features slides and those kind of things. That pool today would cost $8.6 million. And when we did the 3/4 cent sales tax, before I got here, I think it passed in 2016. One of the things where we made a mistake as a community, we were roughly have about $15 million of funding over the life of that. But we proposed about $30 million worth of projects. One of them was a swimming pool, and in 16, at that time, in one meeting, the city council voted to hire an engineering firm to design a new pool. And at that time, the cost estimate by the former city manager was about 1.6. And then when they found out how much it was going to cost, 2 weeks later, they canceled the project. So the city council in 2016 considered doing the design of new pool, and then decided that didn't fall into high enough in the priority list to do out of the CIP tax. We've tried through the earmarking process. We've not identified a grant for this project, but that is a significant undertaking. I believe there's an average, and Eddie has the numbers, there's about 30 kids a day.
Yes, sir.
So that pool serves about 30 kids a day for swimming. So are you going to invest $8.6 million to serve 30 kids an average day to swim? Yes, it would be a big asset for the community, but where does it fit in the priorities? That's one. I guess that's one of my disappointments in seeing a lot of comments. You think from the comments you see on Facebook that there was 1,000 kids that went there every day swimming. Film soundstage, we've tried some different things to fund it. We've not been successful, but we think a soundstage would be an enhancement to our future in being a film capital. We talked about third-party partnerships. One of the things that we're pursuing right now, the large soundstage in Oklahoma City at the old Cox Convention Center, it's well-known fact that when they build a new basketball arena, that's where that's going to go. And so they're going to have to find another location. We've been visiting with them about partnering to do a soundstage here to serve in the interim while they find a location and build their new one. And then when they build it, they'll eventually have one in Oklahoma City. This could be a satellite. And so we're exploring options there. Industrial park, that has been a high priority. City Council, I think we are very close to getting a grant from the Department of Commerce to pay half of that. I will tell you, in recruiting industry, right now, it's not shovel ready, it's farmland. And so we have, one of the projects would be to extend the sewer line up there, from there. When you talk to an industry, and most industries, when they decide they're going to relocate, they want to do it now. They may take 2 years to make their decision, but once they make a decision, they're ready to go. And when you tell them, well, yes, this land's available, but we got to extend the sewer line, well, they're not going to take a chance whether that's going to happen or not, when there's other places they could go where the utilities are already there and it's shovel ready. And I will also let you know it's very competitive. We had and this is something that we don't make public a lot, but we had an industry that looked at traffic, go create over 200 jobs, and we offered them with provisions on the number of jobs, what to pay, full-time jobs, there was a lot of conditions to it. We offered them a free land and $1 billion incentive if they come to Guthrie. We got on the short list, but that's as far as we got. So, I mean, it is very competitive. A lot of people think, well, you have an industrial park, you just go out and find somebody. It's not that easy. It's a very competitive world. Look at the size of the incentives the state of Oklahoma has given now for some of those industries. And you can't give away more.
And we're not getting them either.
You give away the whole 50%. But we have been fairly aggressive in some of our proposals to industries. And I'll talk a little bit about retail more in a little bit. So that's kind of state of the city. Finance and budgeting, you will be going through the budget process. And in that, your first city staff pretty much puts it together and brings you roughly a balanced budget. And then they have a workshop with you, that tentative schedule August 1st. That's when you'll first see the proposed budget. You all can change that process if you want, but historically, our city council has asked staff to, when we first see it as city staff administration, it's probably $2 million more requests than we have revenue. What we bring to the council is a balanced budget. And then we've been through the process with the department heads. And that's when you will hear it. You will see a detail of the payroll for every employee, from city manager on down. We bring you those payroll worksheets that show you how much everybody makes, what their benefits are, and you'll have a detailed budget for each department in different categories: personnel, equipment, services. So you'll have all those details, and that's the way we do the budget. And you can ask all the departments there. You can do it line by line item if you want. Most times, councils don't get into the weeds tremendously, but that's your call. You may do a different process in the future. And then after the workshop, there's, in case you need more than one workshop, there's others built into the schedule. And then you have to have a budget hearing by state statute at least 15 days before the start of the budget. You can adopt a budget at that time, or you've got another meeting on August 19th if you want to make some adjustments and adopt it at your regular meeting on the 19th. But you have to adopt your budget at least 7 days before the next budget year starts. And that's all in your budget schedule. As you saw earlier, police and fire make up a big part of the budget. Workshops, normally what you will see is, as indicated, we think all of our stabilization funds, both of them will be over $1 million, and that's what we're required. But you can see in the general fund, that's where we moved in last October, where we moved money out of the general fund to be eligible, Councilman Williams, for USDA grants. We did a one-time funding, we did a one-time funding because council wanted to overlap between the old city manager and new city manager. We did a one-time funding. We set aside $50,000 towards doing new lighting for Christmas. And out of this fund and another fund, we did $200,000 temporarily for 2 years to add 3 additional EMTs while we try to figure out what we're going to do with the ambulance service and how we will fund it. We did $200,000 for 2 police vehicles and a pickup for animal control. We had an opportunity to buy 3 vehicles, so we went that way, and we're looking for another source to do the animal control. So you'll see these kind of spreadsheets. It'll talk about the general fund and its history and show you what the expenditures are and revenues. So these are the kind of worksheets that you'll see in summary, but you'll have the details on every department. Purchasing, I won't go through that, but there is a purchasing process. Section 1, there's some purchases that are exempt from this process because the sale of property is controlled in the charter, so there's no need repeating it. Emergency and unusual contracts, that's decided by the city council. We have come up with one of those situations recently where we can't buy new pickups. So city council adopted a exception by resolution as an unusual contract because we're having to look at used pickups. Well, you can't go and look at a used pickup and compare them apples to apples because they all have different amenities, they all have different mileage on it. You can't say you got a used pickup, well, you hold it for 2 weeks while we wait to go to council to get it approved. So city council approved through the balance of this year the ability to give the city manager $100,000 authority to buy used pickups for the different departments without going through the normal bid process as an unusual purchase. Otherwise, his authority is at $25,000. After that sunsets, it'll go back to 25. It's just for that. It talks about the city manager's limited authority is $25,000. It talks about another thing that is exempted from this. When you do a public construction contract where you do building or streets or water lines, if it's over 100,000, that's covered by state statute, so there's no need repeating a state statute in our policy. So that policy's there. Jesse pretty much takes care of that. That's talking about the unusual purchases. Now, the last presentation I have is talking about the council retreats. And if you would go to the council retreat tab in your book. We have put the minutes of the 2019 and the 2020 council retreat. That's where you decide priorities. And if you look at the third page back under that tab, there's a sheet in green on it. And the next one will blue. We broke up in those years, we looked at what we called critical issues and opportunities. By the way, that's the mayor's favorite word, opportunity. Everything's a crisis, he says it's an opportunity. What we did was, city councilman at the time and staff, we put together a list of projects. Everybody, all the projects you think we should consider. And they did a short blurb on those projects to define them. We did that list and we sent out and we did a ranking of those projects. And you can see on that first green sheet all the projects we considered and which ones ended up in the top 10. At that time, at the 2019 retreat, those were the items before that first block line are the critical issues to be addressed by the city council at that time. And you can see the ones that were discussed and considered that did not make it in that list. The same way if you turn the page to the blue one, opportunities, you can see we explored a lot of more opportunities than made the priority list. So you have to make choices. You have limited amount of funds. We did similar in the prior years. Now what I'm going to do is, at the last retreat, we did a report on the 20 and 21 priorities where we were. And in infrastructure, we had 6 priorities: wastewater treatment plant, filling in the Harrison Street Bridge, maintenance on our 4 water towers, street overlay program, roof on City Hall, and apply for OWRB grant for the spillway. We funded the $20 million wastewater treatment plant, so we addressed that one. It's under construction. Nobody was happier than me to get that daggone hole filled in. But I'm happy that I put that on the slide. That cost us $621,000, but what did, other than addressing that where you couldn't drive over it, what did we accomplish for $600,000? We could think of a million things that we'd rather spend $600,000, but that had to be addressed. We have not come up with funding to address it. And when you set priorities, I hope you understand, you're not going to get them all done. Those are just priorities, and we work on as many as we can. Street overlay, we did in 2019 overlay project $223,000, and 21 $151,000. Did the roof on City Hall. We got a planning grant for the spillway. OWRB has not come out with a grant to do the actual construction yet. When it does, then we will look at applying for it. Priorities on economic development, developing the existing 80-acre industrial park, develop and implement downtown business recruitment, efforts to develop a shopping center. We've talked about the industrial park. We've talked about a lot of the retail shops that have come to downtown. We try to do things to enhance our businesses in partnership with different events. On recruitment of retail, I want to stop here if I could and show a sample of the type of recruitment videos we do for retail, and it's just a sample of several. Just give you an idea of the effort and quality that I think we're capable of doing.
As the Lieutenant Governor in the state of Oklahoma and Secretary of Tourism, I couldn't think of a better state for Wally's next location than the state of Oklahoma. Travelers from across America are flocking to Oklahoma. This is the crossroads of America, and I think Guthrie, Oklahoma, right in the heart of Oklahoma, would be a perfect place for Wally's next location. Here's some compelling information about Guthrie, right down the road from Oklahoma City, right on I-35.
Hey, Wally's team, just wanted to give you a heads up that the Great American Road Trip goes right through Guthrie, Oklahoma. Guthrie has over 35 annual events, bringing in more than 300,000 attendees every year, and is perfectly situated 30 miles north of Oklahoma City in a constantly growing Logan County along I-35. Now, let us show you the beautiful side of Oklahoma's first Wally's. This 60-acre site has immediate access off Interstate 35 and Seward Road. Annually, the Lazy E Arena brings in over 500,000 visitors to this intersection and over 42,000 travelers pass this interchange every day. Whether you're heading north or south, east or west, this sign has perfect visibility for both interstate and local travelers. We welcome you, Wallies. We can't wait to do the next stop on your Great American Road Trip.
And this is what we did on.
What I do like most about the job, it's always something different to do. Whether you work in the cemetery, parks, the flats, the lakes, I truly enjoy this job.
Public Works consists of 8 different departments: Parks and Recreation Department, Cemetery Department, Streets Department, Line Maintenance, our wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant, convenience center, and fleet maintenance. All departments carry several different required certifications, anywhere from CDLs to NIMS courses, their BNSF training, several different DEQ level classes. I think it's important for our future applicants to know that the city has an excellent benefit plan, good retirement plan that would provide incentives for employees to grow and expand in their skills and knowledge.
Ain't nothing like the city family that I do have, and I thank God for them. And I think it's an honor and a privilege for me to work for the city of Guthrie. Of course, I want to get paid, but it's an honor and a privilege to work for the city of Guthrie.
To apply for a job with the Public Works Department, go to cityofguthrie.com. Scroll down to the Employment tab and look for the application. Once you've filled it out, you can submit it online or drop it off at Guthrie City Hall to the Human Resources Department. Come be a part of Team Guthrie.
This is the promotional video. So those were more than just retail, but while we stopped to show those, I wanted to show you the capability of our staff and GB. Aaron does a great job. We do more than just the open meetings thing, cover meetings. We do a lot of promotion. Those are some sampling of them. In Wally's case, we also did one for Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's was looking at Oklahoma at one time, still are. We did a presentation to them. One of the things challenging for us on retail is we're so close to Edmond. Wally's, it's similar to Buc-ee's, but their second store they put in is at an intersection that has a traffic count of 150,000 cars a day. We have 35,000 cars a day at that intersection. So we try to find things that we can compete for. But when you look at our demographics, and a lot of people don't understand the average household income in Guthrie compared to Edmond is substantially lower. When you look at the population that would be in a radius to go to a retail outlet in Guthrie is substantially lower than 10 miles down the road. So we have to compete. How do we make Guthrie look more than a town of 12 hours? And that's what we have to convince them. And because if I can go to a location 10 miles down the road to put a store in, and I know the household income's almost double what it is in Guthrie, disposable income's higher, that the number of population within 15 miles is substantially more. And I'm going to invest my money and take a risk. Am I going to put it in Edmond or am I going to put it in Guthrie? So while things are growing our way, and we will see growth in the future, it is a very competitive world, and so a lot of people think, well, we would want XYZ, we just call them. It's a lot more competitive than that. And I hope that you all will get involved with city staff and grow to learn that. Planning code enforcement, that's an area, and partly due to my time limits, that we have not made as much progress as I'm sure Dan would like to make. But to update our comprehensive plan, you're looking at about $400,000 investment. So doing it out of house is pretty questionable. To talk about annexation, before I got here several years ago, the city annexed on the east side of I-35. The residents over there fought that. It got de-annexed, and that's part of the confusion of what our city boundaries are, because our boundaries changed in a one-year period. It added, it got taken away. So a lot of people aren't receptive to annexation. This is a development down on I-35 in Waterloo. We met with them, and there is no, on Waterloo, there is no public sewer system. Everything's on septic tanks. Rural Water has a very small lagoon system. To fully develop this, they're going to have a public sewer system, either built themselves or connect ours. We made a pitch to them to use either sales tax rebate or a TIF district to help pay for that sewer system as part of their development cost, to offset their development cost, and then the rest of the sales tax we would generate as a community. In response to the developer, I've got all the money I need. So we have been active. We've tried to recruit OnQ. That's about $400,000 sales tax a year potential. We offered to let them keep $200,000 of that sales tax as an incentive to index for 10 years. And they said, no, we're doing fine. We don't want to pass the sales tax on to our customers, even though it wouldn't raise the cost of our prices. We don't want to index. So a lot of people think annexation is an easy thing. It's not. People don't necessarily want to be annexed. Just letting you know we made the efforts. Downtown maintenance has been quite a challenge. People have said you could do a vacancy tax. We've told, well, so-and-so has a vacancy tax. This town has a vacancy tax. We did the research, and every time we call, no, we don't have such an animal. The only vacancy tax we've been able to find in our research is the city of San Francisco passed by vote of the people vacancy tax. We talked about the registration tax, and the state turned it down. We have been told by both city attorneys during my time that we cannot use our building code enforcement officers to do inspections of downtown business. There's a balance between the individual rights as business owners and public good. The only tool that we've identified as a possibility is a fire marshal. And we need to do some additional research on that. But there does appear that a fire marshal would have the right to do inspections inside buildings relative to fire marshal related things. And of course it could be stretched. But so I think replacing the fire chief, it looked at, I think Eddie's looking at, could we do fire chief / fire marshal? We'll need to do some more research on that, but that does appear one opportunity that we could do inspections downtown.
Can you do that if they're not seeking an occupancy permit?
Yes. You can do, typically in most towns, because you have to have fire plans on how you go address a building when you go in. If there's an interior fire marshals get in and go and inspect every building. Is our understanding. Now, I'm saying we need to do some additional research on it, but that's our understanding today. Now, when we do the additional research, there may be limitations. Quality of life, we pursued the we did irrigation at the soccer fields. We talked about the grant for the softball fields. We'd like to get corporate sponsors to upgrade the 3 existing fields, but we thought we better start the new fields before we pursue that. You can look at if we address all of the ADA accessibility improvements we need to do, that's $6 million. We got about 400,000 a year we do for streets and ADA. So those are in your books, and it kind of talks about the different priorities that you might want to review before you do this year's retreat. It kind of shows what the priorities are, what progress we made. Some of the things we looked at that's still on the board, upgrading some of our alleys for public events in alley. Different types of opportunities for thinking outside of our normal box to provide more opportunities for retail development. I know Dan's working on some of those. I know he's sponsored it a bit to do more of it. We just had such limited administrative staff with everything we're going on to review all those and vet them. Hopefully, progress will be made now with those. I won't go through all those, but those are in your book to look at. Different boards and committees, just to highlight those. They're in your book. Most of them, I know Councilman Guthrie sometimes has heartburn, but they say in the ordinance of freedom that the mayor nominates and the council approves. And we get into that issue. I know one time Councilman Guthrie suggested a different process, and we looked at, well, maybe 3 people nominate. Now, the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustments, that process is set by state statute, but the others we could adjust. But if you do a councilman from each ward, you leave the mayor out. So if you do the mayor and 2 councilmen, then 1 ward is like that. If you do more than 3, then you got a 4. So there was no easy way to come up with a different format. So we finally decided to leave it alone. And the way our ordinance is set up, the mayor typically nominates. Sometimes it says appoint, subject to, sometimes it says nominate. But they're all advisory boards. I know the library board come forward at a recent meeting and read a statute how they were supposed to be involved in making more decisions and stuff. Well, the statute they read was not applicable to the city manager form of government. And that's a problem a lot of citizens make, and they were told over and over again that statute didn't apply to our form of government. But citizens will read a statute that's out there, but it's not applicable to our form of government. All of our boards, with the exception of the Board of Adjustments, can make decisions. Any decision made by the Board of Adjustments is appealed to the district court, not to city council.
No, but the council has to decide whether or not they're going to, I mean, in theory, the council can say that they're not going to defend the action of the board. They've done that before.
They cannot defend it, but the decision of the Board of Adjustments is appealed to district court not to.
Right, but if you don't send an attorney to defend it, which has happened before.
Not my tenure, but I'm sure that.
But if you don't send an attorney to defend it, the court has no option but to give default judgment to the property owner.
But anyway, they are a decision-making body, more judicial, and their decisions are not appealed to city council or appealed to the district court. Planning Commission has quasi-decision-making authority to appoint, but it comes to city council to be approved. And then HPC has decision-making authority, but it is also subject to being appealed to city council. But the rest of them are all advisory boards in capacity. I know I rushed through it again, but trying to get you out at lunchtime. Be glad to address questions. I hope this gives you some idea of how our form of government works, where we're at on projects, how our previous planning retreats have done. Again, I know there's new players, they're jockeying for position. I think once you get through the budget process and you determine what the priorities are with our funds we have available, and you go through the retreat and decide what the priorities are, I think things will calm down a lot, because we will have a plan for the next 12 months or 24 months. Any questions I can address? Well, I've enjoyed being here for the last 6 years.
You've done a thorough job.
Yeah.
And set up a good pathway to move forward for whoever comes in.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you for the very great overview. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think putting this document together too, the Bible here, gives us a good reference point. So,
We also
all
get paid
staff
to the-
put that
how much
together.
does the city make? How much does the city make for doing this?
How much does the city make?
10,000, all in.
Oh, yeah,
Make-
10,000, I'm
So
sorry.
OMAC pays us $10,000 to do this.
all right.
And we should do it every year.
Well, that's a good course.
I think the citizens would really benefit from seeing the state of the city address. I know you put it out there for them to see it, I'm just saying that would solve a lot of issues we have.
We did it at the chamber, they did a luncheon, and then we did it in the evening for people that work during the day that weren't available. I think we had 3 people show up for the evening.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it's available on.
It's,
I know.
And we also did it for chamber leadership class, and it is available. One of the difficulties is engagement. I mean, it's one thing to criticize, but to be fully aware before you criticize. And we put news releases out to both news media. We put it on our Facebook page, we put it on our website, we put it on our individual Facebook pages, a lot of times to get it out to people. I talk to people up and down the street. When I go to lunch, if I go to lunch downtown, I walk and I stop in shops and visit with people. So I'm sure there's additional ways to do it, but getting people to sit down and actually look at it is a challenge. And I know we're all busy.
$5 off their utility bill for a month. They watch the.
Take this test and pass it.
they gotta pass it. They gotta pass it.
Real quick too, I was invited to the Logan County Republican GOP group again, and I went. It went well. I did ask, I said, does anybody want to guess from the audience what our city budget is? One lady said 100,000. I was getting 200,000. Somebody said 2 million, and somebody goes, oh, there's no way it's that high. And anyways, I told them the number, but it was just, I couldn't believe somebody thought our city annual budget, general fund, was $100,000.
Well, and then they found out the truth, and now gives validity to the fact that we're all taking kickbacks.
Yes, slush funds and everything. I should have said before or after the kickbacks. Yeah, you're right, yeah, 100K. Yeah.
Jim, you got any questions or comments or
Nope.
anybody else here at the table?
No, I'm just comment, and I'm sure this is the second course I've been through in my tenure here, and it's very good, very informative. I think it should be taken every year, unless you're like Guthrie and you're what, up to how many years on the council? Maybe it's not necessary. I'd say your first 4-year term, I think it should be done every year. I think it's good. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, Leroy, I appreciate that. Staff, appreciate obviously all the things that you do and taking your half day to be here as a part of this too. I look forward to more information and the retreat. I think the retreat is a good process. Budget is a good process. I think we've got, as was identified right off the bat. I think Guthrie is doing a lot of things that can serve as a model for cities around the state. And these guys see it all, so they see it all. With that,